Hey, thanks, Sid. Thank you everyone for joining. I see that we've got about 15 One Animation people in the channel, so thanks for joining and seeing what we're making for you guys. So as Sid mentioned, we're an ex-Softomage house, so we have a lot of experience with ice. When we did the switch over to Maya a couple years ago, like we've grown to really love Maya, but there was always a bunch of stuff missing, like a bunch of power missing that we could do with ice. And we kept promising the animators that, just wait for Bifrost to come out, then you're going to get these tools back, and we're gonna push the technology forward. So thankfully, we're in a position now where that can happen. The Bifrost developers have done an amazing job. Like it's to be honest, it's exceeding what ICE was, and I'm really optimistic about the future. So okay, so I'm gonna walk through. Oh yeah, one thing. I asked Sid. I asked Sid to for us to have this chat because I really do want to dispel the idea that Bifrost is just for effects. He mentioned that before, but it's something that's really quite prevalent in the industry. And I think if we can change people's minds so that they understand that it's more than just an effects tool, it's a way to fundamentally rethink all aspects of your animation pipeline, like down to asset creation, but also to animation. I mean, the sky's the limit. So if we can change a couple minds with that, then I think we'll be doing a service for the industry. Okay, so let me share the screen. Share screen. Okay, so I'm just going to show you one very useful tool that you can make with 30 nodes, and then Jason's going to show you a bunch of cool tools that he's prepared for the future of our company. Okay, so this tool, what you see here, is a character's animation taken from an animation library. Character's walking forward in the Z direction, and as you can see, it's walking through the floor. It's completely, mindless. It's not adapting to anything. So for an animator would actually have to take this and then animate the position of the feet, animate the position of the hip, and it would actually be a lot of extra work. The cool thing is Bifrost can do this for us. So Bifrost has something called raycast nodes. Here you can see the Bifrost floor detection working. So with raycast nodes, we can detect where the floor is, we can adapt the character to the floor, and we can even rotate its feet so it doesn't intersect the floor, and the feet will adjust to it. And the beauty of this is it's really about 30 nodes, and it saves a ton of time on the animator side. And it's not hard to pull off. So I'm going to quickly walk you through the functionality. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a locator, which is supposed to be the control, and then the blue rectangular object is the foot. The basic functionality is while the control is above the ground, the foot follows the control perfectly. So it doesn't care about floor detect. But once the control goes under the ground, it follows the control, but also conforms to the floor surface. So this is done, as I mentioned, with just a raycast node and a little bit of linear algebra, and I'll show you right now. Okay, one thing that I do want to mention is if you want to ever get this to work on a character, like say a biped, you'd want to have one of these compounds on each IK foot that calculates both translation and rotation, and then one on the hip, like the body control, like right at the hip of the character. But that one should only calculate translation. So as you can see here on this floor detect compound, I do have a little toggle here that says build rotation. And that will just decide whether that just tells it whether you want to build a rotation or not. Take a look at the inputs. They're pretty simple. It's just the controller matrix and it's just the floor mesh. And in about a second, I'll jump into the actual compound and show you how simple it is. So there's a video, so just give it a second. There we go. Okay. So this, I'm going to pause right here. This green backdrop that you see up there, that's actually the heart of the whole thing. You'll notice it says build raycast accelerator and sample raycast accelerator. If all you learned was that, that's basically the tool. The rest is just wrapped around it. So a raycast is I mean, for those of you that aren't super technical, it shoots a ray in a direction that you define, and it'll return if it hit an object which you define. So I'm right here. I'm detecting whether the ray hit our floor geo or not. So and under the sample raycast accelerator, if it hit the floor geo, it'll return the position where it hit that floor geo. So that way I know exactly where the floor is and where the feet need to snap to. So let's step through. So yeah, it's just the raycast accelerator doing what I mentioned. I split up the entire matrix to SRTs so I can just deal with the translation, as you can see right there. And then we'll just wait a little bit more. Okay, down here, in this other backdrop here, where it says sample raycast hit position, all I'm doing is sampling where it hit. So it's going to return the translation of where it hit the floor geo. That's all it does. So so the cool thing about that is the return of this. Sorry, I accidentally went in there. The return of this is that we now have the exact translation where the foot hit the floor. If we just output this, we could be done. Like we could have just the translation, but unfortunately we need to worry about rotation as well. And rotation's what is a little bit harder. You have to learn a little bit about quaternions and stuff. But I won't jump too deep into quaternions, but I'll describe them pretty quickly. So I should be jumping in any second now. Okay, so I'm going to pause right here. So this is taking the same location that the raycast hit, and it's going into a sample property node that is set to sample the point normal. So this samples a normal of the location of where it hit. This is how we're going to build the rotation. Now on the backdrop below, now I did this with my own nodes, but there is a get angle between vectors compound out there. I made this a long time ago. I didn't even know about that compound. So here I'm just finding the angle between -1y and the point normal of where it hit. This is going to give me the angle that I should rotate the foot on. That's it. Okay, so this next thing is I'm doing a cross product between the point normal and -1y. What this will do is it's going to give me the perpendicular vector. That's the axis that I want to rotate on. So now I have axis and I have the angle to rotate on. So I pump it into an axis and angle node, and then I multiply the quaternions together of this and the original controller. That's how I build the rotation. So I know that that seems a little complicated, but just with some basic linear algebra knowledge, like you'll figure that out. For the TDs amongst us, that was probably pretty easy. What's left here is I'm just doing some ifs to see, do I need to build a rotation? If so, build a quaternion. And if the floor was detected. If the floor was detected, snap to the floor. If not, just follow the controller. That's basically it. That's how you do floor detect with 30 nodes. And this is how you can save hours and hours and hours of animation off of, for all of our animators. So we've been waiting a long time for this. We had this in ICE, and we had some prototypes that we built before using C++, but nothing gave us the performance that this does. And yeah, that's basically it. 30 nodes, and you've just made every single one of your animators' life a lot easier. So that's a basic example of like how you can use Bifrost to make production go faster. So Jason's been on this full time though, and Jason's got a bunch of really cool stuff that he's going to show you that goes really far more in depth. But yeah, I guess I'll just pass it over to Jason now.
Cool, thanks, dude. Let me switch over to my screen quickly. And there we go. Okay, so hey guys, first of all, I'm in charge of the Maya pipeline over at One Animation. And like Enrique said, I've been kind of tasked to figure out ways on how we can actually use Bifrost, not only in effects, but just in rigging, animation, layout, just anything in Maya in general. So I won't be going too in depth about how it technically works, but I will show you the top level graph so you get somewhat of an idea of what's there. But to kick it off, let me just start this guy. So right now we have a planar squash reformer. So over here I'm plugging in the cube, and I'm plugging in the mesh as a collider. And this is able to actually go down and squash this cube. And keep in mind, since this is procedural, you could plug in any kind of mesh you want, right? Which is the benefit of using Bifrost. Now, usually I would have to go through probably RMDS and Python, see if it works okay, and then later on I would convert this over to C++ for performance reasons. But since you can kind of skip all that and you can prototype everything inside of Bifrost, which is pretty nice since it just makes it easier to iterate different kind of versions and play around a bit. It's kind of like a sandbox, to be honest, which is really cool. So over here, we're just showing that, it also doesn't have to be a plane as well. So it could work with any kind of deformation. And again, since this is a procedural, you can also just duplicate these guys and drop them in over to the graph, and you can start using these as collision objects. And with that, you can just go ahead and it's able to collide against the mesh right now, which is pretty cool since you can, it could be on a per scene basis of using whatever you want. It doesn't have to be hard-coded in any way. It just depends on how you actually make your node, if it's compatible or not. And with that, you can see what settings to push it out and what it was before and how it handles all the different collisions. So that's just a quick example of that can handle deformations. And here's a more practical example where I'm also squashing, but I'm using it against all the wheels. And a slightly different thing I'm doing with this one is that since the mesh on the wheels are actually, the topology is not that great, I also have a kind of like a, I guess, a proxy object underneath each wheel. So not only is it squashing against the wheel itself is pretty much like a wrap deformer that's being used against it. And those are the proxy objects I've been talking about. And there's a few extra stuff I also did to this car. So it's not only squashing, it also has dynamics for the body, so real-time dynamics. I don't know if you can make it out, but it does have auto rotate as well on the wheels. And with that, you can see it all working together. So I do have some limits that I try to put into the dynamics. So you try to minimize intersections as much as possible. You can mix a little bit of like classical rigging, build in Bifrost, and actually use Maya's traditional framework as well. So here's the graph that shows how to do the dynamics. In fact, I'm using a single particle to do these dynamics right now. So it's just a simple steering behavior that's pointing to the middle of the body, and I'm just using the deltas of the target to where the particle is to control the dynamics. And later on, I'll be explaining a bit more of how that works. And the last thing that it does as well is kind of like a cartoon effect to stick the wheels onto the ground. So kind of like what Enrique did with raycast, I can also raycast these wheels, and everything is still working with auto roll and squash. So yeah, you can also use Bifrost for more traditional rigging solutions as well. Cool. So let me pause it here for a second. What I'm showing here is a website called Open Processing. And this is kind of like a sandbox for me where you can build different scripts with JavaScript. Sometimes I use it for more like generative art, but I also use it for more R&D purposes as well. So that particle that I just showed is actually something that I did over here first. And then later on, I converted that over to Bifrost. So if you want, you can play around with this in the browser, the link is over here. And it's just a simple ball that follows along with the cursor of the mouse. And since it's all open source, if you click on the tag up here, you can check out the code and see exactly how it works. And inside of Bifrost, it's pretty true to how it is as well. So another thing that I wanted to try to do is a Verlet integration. So this is something I did first over here at Open Processing. I'm not using any libraries or anything like that. So I wanted to see if this is something I can try to replicate over in Maya. And since it's a sim, there's a different settings that you can play around with as well. And of course, you can always check out the code and learn exactly how it works. So here's a strand I have. And just like the sketch and open processing, I'm able to get some simple dynamics on there. And since it's procedural, you can use different settings, change the layout, change the point count, which is pretty cool. So now I'm able to have the same kind of effect, and everything is working real time in the viewport. So I have a collision object with that as well. And I figured kind of the next logical step is I would want to take any given curve and just make that dynamic. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Just draw a curve out, put it inside Bifrost, and just make it dynamic. So there's a few settings that I could play along with it as well. And one of it is just the snap points. I mean, technically, I hard-coded just the first and the last to be snap, but you know, it would be possible to make it so you can even paint what verts are snapping as well. So next logical step I figured is I got to get mesh working. So I did a simple compound for a chain where you can set the size, how many links there are. So somebody in the question, the Q&A mentioned about how to do procedural modeling. Maybe it is not the most fancy example, but in a sense, yeah, you could also use it like this to do procedural modeling. Each link is also using a Bifrost instance as well, so it tries to squeeze a little bit of extra performance for it. And I figured I need to actually get some kind of practical example working for this. So I have a simple catapult rigged up. Not so obvious here, but the rope is actually, it's pretty much acting like a curve deform right now. It's being done all in Bifrost. So I had this mesh before, but the nodes inside, it's calculating the deformation itself. So you can take any given mesh and act like a curve deform. And one new feature that's showing over here is I made it so it'll snap out and you can set a certain distance for that. So it could be a little more interactive with animation and how they actually use it as well. And something I'll mention here, let me pause a quick bit, is you could change the rope type. So this is using the braids from Maxim, who I think is in the attendees right now. Hey, dude. So the really cool thing about this is I have no idea how this works. It's just a compound that Maxim uploaded for us to download. And it kind of shows you the power of Bifrost, where you don't even have to know how something works, where it could be to the point of plug and play, where, this whole idea, I had no idea I was going to use the braids, and all of a sudden it's something you could just go ahead and use. And with that, everything is still working as usual with snapping everything out. And because I had the chains before, I can also use the chains over here. So you're slowly building up a library of compounds that you can use later on. And another example on open processing is particles are used as a steering behavior for seeking text. So this is actually the same thing I use for the car body, but except now we have a ton of them. So I'm trying to use the same effect over here inside of Maya. And of course, since it's open source, you're welcome to always come over and read the source code itself. And with that, the cool thing is that you can get everything kind of working in real time. And I know this is more of a kind of effects centric kind of thing, although this got me thinking, what other uses you can do for maybe animation. And so for this example, we have primitives over here. And the way how this works is that this locator is going to drive where these particles are settling. And it's going to make up that mesh that you put in. And keep in mind, this is all procedural as well. So you could always take a primitive away, or you can always add one in. The primitives are over here on the top. And I could just imagine practical examples you could do with this. Like maybe you have a bunch of flies going around, and as a character is walking towards it, you can have these flies actually interact with the character. So you can get stuff that is more interactive with animation. And here's an example where now instead of drawing it as trails, you can draw it as something else. So you can make interesting play blasts with these as well. So yeah, that's generally what we've been up to, what we've been exploring. So I hope it inspires you guys to take a closer look and not only think of it as effects, but also rigging tools or anything else other in your pipeline. So yeah. Thanks, and Sid, I think you can go ahead and take over.